If you stay with me for the next 9 minutes, you will finally understand why some people can walk through fire and come out laughing. Right now, somewhere in America, there is someone cracking jokes at a funeral, finding humor in a layoff, laughing through a breakup that would destroy most people. And everyone around them thinks they were either incredibly resilient or deeply broken. According to recent neuroscience research, neither assumption is correct. Their brain has been fundamentally rewired by experiences most people can't imagine surviving. What I'm about to show you will change how you see every person who's ever made you uncomfortable with how okay they seem when nothing is okay. Let's start with something nobody wants to admit about the pandemic years of 2020 and 2021. While most of America was panicking about toilet paper and Zoom fatigue, there was a quieter group who barely flinched. Not because they didn't care, but because compared to what they already survived, a global pandemic was just Tuesday. They already lived through personal apocalypses that made lockdown feel manageable. Their friends kept asking, "How are you so calm right now?" And they could explain that when you've already hit bottom multiple times, the world falling apart around you registers as background noise. The chaos everyone else was discovering for the first time. They'd been living in it for years. Here's what's actually happening in the brain of someone who laughs at everything. Neuroscientists at Stanford studied trauma survivors in 2023 and found something remarkable. Their amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, doesn't just stay activated. It becomes hyper-efficient. Think of it like a smoke detector that's been through so many fires it learned to distinguish between actual danger and burnt toast. These people aren't numb. They recalibrated differently. Their nervous system operates on what researchers call an elevated baseline, meaning what feels like a crisis to you registers as manageable stress to them. It's not that they don't feel fear. It's that their brain has recategorized what qualifies as genuinely threatening versus just uncomfortable. But here's where the biology gets really interesting. A 2024 study from the University of Michigan found that chronic stress exposure actually alters dopamine receptor density in specific brain regions. People who've endured prolonged trauma show significantly different reward processing patterns. They don't get the same dopamine hit from everyday pleasures that others do. A nice dinner, a compliment, a quiet evening, these things barely move the needle. But dark humor, that activates their reward centers intensely. Laughter becomes one of the few reliable sources of neurochemical relief their brain can access. It's not a choice to find everything funny. It's a biological adaptation their system developed to survive when normal coping mechanisms stopped working. Now let's talk about what psychologists call post-traumatic recalibration. This is different from post-traumatic growth, which you've probably heard about. Recalibration is about how your entire emotional scale gets reset. Imagine your nervous system like a thermostat that used to freak out at 70 degrees, but now only responds to temperatures above 90. These individuals develop what looks like immunity to chaos, but it's actually threat threshold elevation. Research from Yale in 2022 showed that trauma survivors score significantly lower on perceived stress scales, not because their lives are less stressful, but because their definition of what counts as stressful has fundamentally changed. A flat tire isn't a disaster. It's an inconvenience. A job loss isn't the end of the world. It's a plot twist. Their perspective isn't to optimism. It's proportion born from surviving things that actually were disasters. Here's something most people completely misunderstand. When someone who's been through hell becomes hyper-empathetic, it's not because trauma made them nicer. It's because their threat detection system learned that reading people accurately is survival. Children who grow up in unpredictable environments develop what's called environmental scanning behavior. They learn to detect mood shifts, facial microexpressions, vocal tone changes with almost supernatural accuracy because missing those signals once meant danger. That skill does disappear when the threat does. So now they walk through life picking up emotional signals most people don't even know exist. That slight hesitation before you answer. That forced brightness in your voice. That moment your smile doesn't quite reach your eyes. They caught all of it. And they already running calculations about whether you okay. and how to help without making you feel exposed. It's not a gift. It's a scar that looks like sensitivity. But there's a darker layer nobody talks about. This same hypervigilance makes normal life exhausting. Every restaurant requires sitting with back to the wall, facing the exit. Every relationship includes 17 contingency plans for how it might end. Every good moment comes with intrusive thoughts about when the other shoe will drop. A 2025 study on complex PEAS found that the nervous system's threat detection doesn't distinguish between past and present very well. So even years after the danger has passed, the body stays ready. That person who laughs at everything, they not actually relaxed. They performing relaxed while their nervous system runs a constant background program scanning for threats. The laughter is real, but so is the exhaustion underneath it. And here's something that might make you uncomfortable. People who've survived too much often develop what I call humor as emotional armor. It's not the same as healthy coping. It's a defense mechanism that prevents anyone from getting close enough to see the damage. Every joke is a moat. Every laugh is a distraction. Ask them how they really doing and watch how fast they deflect with another punchline. Because vulnerability feels like handing someone a weapon, and their experience taught them that people use those weapons. So they learn to be the funny one, the resilient one, the one who's always okay. Not because they are okay, because being perceived as not okay once meant being hurt worse. The irony is suffocating. The thing that makes them so good at connecting with others, their ability to read pain, is the same thing that keeps them isolated. They see your hurt, but they can show you theirs. Let's address what happens in relationships with someone like this. They exhibit what researchers call contradictory attachment patterns. Intensely loyal yet emotionally distant. Available at 3 in the morning for your crisis, but unavailable for their own. They'll drive across the state to help you move, but one tell you they're struggling financially. A study from the University of Pennsylvania in 2023 found that trauma survivors with this pattern aren't being manipulative. They're operating from a deeply ingrained belief that their needs are burdensome and that dependence equals danger. Every relationship comes with a mental exit strategy, not because they want to leave but because they've learned that everyone eventually does. So they protect themselves by staying close enough to care but distant enough that it won't destroy them when you go. Here's where it gets philosophical. These individuals develop what I call disaster fluency. They're exceptionally good at adapting to change, because change has been the only constant they've known. New job, new city, new relationship status, relationship ending, career pivoting, life imploding. None of it phases them the way it does other people. They're not brave. They're just experienced in rebuilding from rubble. What looks like confidence is actually just pattern recognition. They've survived loss before. They know they'll survive it again. That dark humor everyone finds unsettling. It's their way of reclaiming power over powerlessness. Every joke about their own pain is a tiny act of defiance. A statement that says, "You didn't break me, and I get to decide what this means now." Now here's the part that rarely gets acknowledged. There's a specific type of grief these people carry that has no name. They're not mourning someone who died. They're mourning the version of themselves who died. The self who trusted easily before trust became dangerous. The self who laughed without scanning the room for exits first. The self who moved through the world with lightness instead of hypervigilance. That self is gone, and nobody throws a funeral for lost innocence. Nobody acknowledges that you can be homesick for a version of yourself you barely remember. A childhood that got interrupted. A softness that survival required you to harden. A freedom you learned about only after it was already gone. This grief does look like crying. It looks like someone who finds everything funny, because if they stop laughing, they might start screaming. Here's what changes everything. People who've endured too much just survive. They develop pattern recognition for resilience in others. They can spot another survivor across a crowded room, not because of what they say, but because of how they hold themselves. That particular combination of openness and guardedness, warmth with boundaries, humor with weight behind it. They recognize their own frequency in someone else and suddenly feel less alone in a way that's hard to explain. These aren't friendships built on shared interests. They reconnections built on shared understanding of what it costs to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. And that bond runs deeper than most people will ever experience. But let me be clear about something most psychology content 1T tell you. There's a critical difference between adaptive humor and avoidant humor. Adaptive humor helps you process and integrate pain. Avoidant humor buries pain under jokes, so you never have to feel it. If laughter genuinely brings relief and helps you move forward, that's healthy coping. If laughter is the only response you're capable of, if every serious emotion gets immediately converted to a punchline before you can actually feel it, that's not resilience. That's compression. And compression eventually causes explosions. So ask yourself honestly, do you laugh because it helps you cope, or because feeling anything else terrifies you? One is a tool, the other is a trap, and knowing the difference might save your life. Here's the reframe nobody offers. American culture worships a very specific kind of strength, the kind that never cracks, never complains, never shows that anything hurts. People who laugh through pain get celebrated as resilient while quietly falling apart inside. But what if the real strength isn't in never breaking? What if it's in how many times you can reassemble yourself, even when some pieces don't fit the same way anymore? What if survival over spectacle, meaning over performance, and honest fragility over performed strength are just as valid? These people aren't emotional superheroes. They're humans whose circumstances force them to develop skills most people never need. Skills that look impressive from the outside, but feel heavy from the inside. The next time you meet someone who seems a little too comfortable with chaos, who laughs a little too quickly at their own pain, who deflects every serious moment with humor, remember this. They're not showing off. They're not emotionally invincible. They're carrying weight you can see, while making it look effortless, because that's what survival taught them to do. Every joke is a scar turned into a story. Every laugh is a choice to keep going when stopping would be easier. They're not broken. They're not fixed. They're somewhere in between, doing the best they can with a nervous system that learned the world isn't safe. And somehow, despite everything, they're still here. Still finding reasons to hope. Still choosing to laugh even when crying would make more sense. That's not just psychology. That's the human spirit refusing to be extinguished. If this explains something you've felt but couldn't name, you need to understand why some people can sit in complete silence without feeling like they're drowning. That's where things get even more complex. Because if laughter is armor, what happens when you meet someone whose armor is stillness? It's Psychology Unpacked. See you in the next Unpacked.